Hi everyone. Before I say a word, just look at this table on your screen. Three groups, three very different levels of wealth. On the left, all white South Africans, about 4.5 million people. In the middle, the wealthiest 4.5 million non-white South Africans. On the right, everyone else, tens of millions of ordinary people trying to survive. According to the official story, racial discrimination ended in 1994. According to our laws, only one of these groups can ever be privileged, and only one can ever be previously disadvantaged. But when you look at the numbers, something doesn't add up. One group is richer per person than the whites and still qualifies for race-based benefits. Another group is overwhelmingly poor and gets almost nothing. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I built this table from official data, step by step, and then you can decide for yourself. Is this transformation? Or is this a new form of racial discrimination? Today, I want to unpack a topic that almost always leads to people talking past each other. Racial discrimination in South Africa. A while ago, President Donald Trump talked about white South Africans, especially Afrikaners, and suggested they were facing racial discrimination. Many people inside and outside South Africa strongly disagreed with him. So in this video, I'm not asking you to choose between Trump and the ANC. I'm not going to argue feelings, history, or party politics. I'm going to do something much simpler. Use South Africa's own law and South Africa's own wealth data to examine one question. Does racial discrimination against white people exist in South Africa today? Please watch until the end before you decide. The law, racial discrimination. Now, before we can test anything, we need a clear baseline. What does South African law mean by racial discrimination? In plain language, South African law defines it very simply. If people are treated differently because of their race, that is racial discrimination. You do not need to prove hatred, bad motives, or personal malice. You only need to show that race decides who gets the benefits and who carries the burdens. South African law, the Constitution, and the Equality Act says that treating people differently because of their race is discrimination. The only question the courts ask afterward is whether the government can justify it as fair. Let me repeat that, because it is the foundation of the entire argument. If race decides who gets the advantage and who gets the disadvantage, that is racial discrimination. And Black economic empowerment laws do exactly that. They predetermine which race groups get preference and which do not. That's not my definition. That's how the law itself works. Racial discrimination. Example. Here is an example. On this slide, we have two candidates. Candidate A, on the left, gets the job, not because of better skills or experience, but because their race matches what the employer is looking for. Candidate B, on the right, is excluded from the job, even though they may be equally or even more qualified, purely because of their race. In other words, race is being used to decide who gets the benefit and who carries the burden. Under South African law, this is exactly what racial discrimination means. When people are treated differently or denied a fair chance because of the color of their skin. The three groups. New map of South Africa. The three groups. New map of South Africa. Most people still talk about South Africa as whites versus non-whites, or a rich white minority versus a poor black majority. That picture was roughly true in 1994. It is no longer the full story. For this video, I'm going to divide South Africa into three wealth groups, not four race boxes. Group 1, all white South Africans, around 4.5 million people. Group 2, the new non-white elite, the wealthiest 4.5 million non-white South Africans, that is, the top slice of black, colored, and Indian households. This is the Black economic empowerment elite, the people most likely to sit on boards, benefit from big deals, and shape policy. The second group is not a random number. It's exactly the same size as the first group, 4.5 million people. I chose that on purpose so we can line them up side by side and ask a simple question. Which group does the system discriminate against? That makes the comparison fair. We're no longer comparing a small minority to the entire rest of the country. We're comparing head-for-head blocks. Group 3, the left-behind majority. Around 52 million people. Mostly black, but it includes people of all races. This is where most of the poor live. in townships, rural areas, informal settlements, and struggling suburbs. Using official wealth data and a detailed prompt I fed into ChatGPT. A prompt that's reproduced in my ebook so anyone can repeat the calculations. I asked a simple question. Between these three groups, who is richest overall and who is richest per person? Here's what the data shows when you fill in the table. The richest group overall is Group 2, the new non-white elite, not the white group. Richest per person. Again, the winner is Group 2. The elite non-white group now has more wealth per person than Group 1, the white group. Who benefits most from Black economic empowerment? Black economic empowerment defines Black people as Africans, coloreds, and Indians. White people, by law, cannot personally qualify as beneficiaries. In practice, who is best positioned to cash in on these laws? People with networks, education, and access to capital. People who can sit on boards, front empowerment deals, and structure tenders. That is overwhelmingly Group 2, the new non-white elite and upper middle class. Group 3, the poor majority, gets some benefits, but very little of the real asset transfer. Group 1, the white group, is explicitly excluded from Black economic empowerment by race. Only one group comes out as the clear winner on all three lines. Group 2, the elite non-white group. If this way of looking at South Africa makes sense to you, please pause for a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who've never heard this side of the story. Inequality. Huge black gap. Inequality. Who is left behind? Now let's talk about inequality, because this is where it gets even more uncomfortable. South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world. But the pattern inside that inequality has changed. If you look at modern inequality research and Gini-type measures, inequality within the Black population is now higher than the inequality between Black and white as whole groups. In other words, the gap between rich Blacks and poor Blacks is bigger than the average gap between Blacks and whites. So what does that tell us? It tells us that Group 2, the new non-white elite, has pulled far away from Group 3, the left-behind majority, which is mostly Black. Black economic empowerment and race-based laws are sold to the country as tools to help Black people. But when you overlay the numbers, the rich slice of Black, colored, and Indian South Africans becomes richer and more protected. The poor majority of Black South Africans barely move, and the white group is explicitly targeted for exclusion. So inequality has deepened inside the very population that was supposed to be uplifted. Why does the law still protect the elite? Why does the law still protect the elite? Van Heerden. At this point, a reasonable person might ask, if Group 2 is now richer than the white group, why does the law still protect them and exclude whites? To answer that, we need to look at how the courts judge whether racial preference is fair. They use something called the Van Heerden test. In simple language, it asks three questions. Does the policy target a previously disadvantaged group? Is it designed to help them? Does it help them in reality? If all three answers are yes, the measure is treated as valid redress, not unfair discrimination. On paper, that sounds reasonable. But here's the problem, and this is the kicker. The elite non-white group, Group 2, now the richest group per person in the country, still ticks all three boxes. Why? Previously disadvantaged? Yes, as long as the label previously disadvantaged is attached to a race group, every wealthy member of that race group keeps the status forever. Designed to help them? Yes. The original design of Black economic empowerment and race laws was to help non-white groups. The law doesn't automatically switch off once they become richer than whites. Does it help them in reality? Yes. The evidence shows they have become richer and richer, both in total and per person, and win the lion's share of big deals. So the Van Heerden test effectively says, as long as your group was disadvantaged in the past, the law can keep giving you racial preference, even after you've become the richest group, and even if this means another group is now discriminated against. The test never asks, what if the previously disadvantaged group has become superior in wealth, power, and access? At what point do the racial preferences themselves become discrimination? There is no real off-ramp. So even after surpassing Group 1 in total and per capita wealth, the elite non-white group will forever qualify for racial preference, no matter how rich they become. The fairness question. Is this fair? The fairness question. So now we arrive at the simple, uncomfortable question. Is this fair? Let's spell it out. We have a group that is now the richest overall and the richest per person. A group that benefits the most from Black economic empowerment and race-based laws. A group that has major influence over parliament, policy, and enforcement. A group that is still legally protected by race as previously disadvantaged, and at the same time, another group that is explicitly excluded from Black economic empowerment by race. A group whose members often see doors closed in jobs, tenders, and bursaries purely because of their skin color, regardless of their personal history. And all this happens in a legal system that says, if race decides who gets the benefits and who carries the burdens, that is racial discrimination. You don't have to support any South African political party. All you have to do is answer, honestly. If the richest group by race is protected by law to keep benefiting, and the poorer group by race is legally targeted for exclusion, does that still look like redress? Or does it start to look like a new form of racial discrimination? South African law says, if race determines the benefits and burdens, the answer is yes. If this video helped you see things more clearly, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks the old story explains today's inequality. For the full argument, step-by-step data, and all the legal references, get the ebook, Racial Discrimination in South Africa. President Trump, here is the evidence. Visit justicesa.com or scan the QR code on screen.